Okay, so hello everyone. Today I want to talk a bit about our journey to cloud native and to cloud native platforms. And just as a start, just for me to set the scene a bit, how many of you were looking for a job in Austria in the last few years? How many of you took a look at the career platform Karriere.at? Perfect. So I think this is a thing I can work with. So 2 sentences about me. So my name is Schuetz. I'm a senior enterprise architect at Karriere.at. In my free time, I'm teaching cloud native stuff and so on at universities of applied sciences. I am a CNCF ambassador. And besides that, I also founded my own company, which is delivering cloud native trainings to everyone. In the last years, my focus was on making Kubernetes approachable for developers. So we all know Kubernetes can be really cumbersome and so on. And I just wanted to make it a bit easier for everyone. Furthermore, at the moment, I'm about to design an awesome developer experience at Karriere.at, but also want to awaken the curiosity in engineers. Not only at Karriere.at, also at universities, also at home, and so on. So let's set the scene a bit. So Karriere.at at the moment is running in a highly monolithic setting. So developers have some kind of expectations on what they want to work with. So as an example, developers can work without the intervention of a platform team at the moment. Furthermore, they can develop something, they push something in the Git repository, and in the end, it will get delivered to production in the end. Furthermore, if they are bootstrapping new services in their on-premise environment, everything is auto-generated, so nothing to take care of. They have all of the comfort features which have been developed in the last 20 years, and the cool thing is they have no infrastructure responsibilities at the moment. But now everything's cool, right? So why did we start to go cloud native? And I think this is the same old story everybody of you knows. The first thing is we went towards a microservices infrastructure architecture just to be able to react faster on things, just to split the the services for developers, and so on. We wanted to get faster, and we wanted to be able to adopt modern technologies a bit faster. So we wanted to say if there is a new database, or if there are AIs, things in there in the Google Cloud and whatever, we want to be able to use it, which would not be possible in our current on-premise infrastructure. We wanted to reduce our operational overhead. So at the moment, I think Karriere.at has 3 million visitors per month. We are operating this with around 3 platform guys at the moment. And last but not least, we wanted to improve our developer experience. And this is very hard when you think about the last slide. So they had everything, right? So there are some expectations we have to developers, and not only we at Karriere.at, but everyone who is going towards cloud native and towards DevOps and so on. And these are just some things they have to take care of after this transition has been done. So as an example, they have to deal about monitoring. They have to deal about the security of the services. They have to deal with their secrets, but also they have to deal with more traditional developer-like stuff, like their API design. But new things they get is GitOps, CI/CD, so lots of technologies they didn't even take care of until now. And there is also one sentence besides that, which is also always marked with an asterisk. You are responsible for your service. So it's in the responsibility of the developer that his or her service runs. Good. These are the expectations to our developers. But what do they get? In fact, when you think about it as from the standpoint of a developer, developers get Kubernetes and lots of technologies which are making their daily work harder. remember, they had everything. They had their on-premises infrastructure. This worked. Now they have lots of technologies, lots of new things to learn. Good. So we started a cloud native journey, just like everyone. So the typical first steps every platform team takes when getting to a cloud native environment, they build their cloud foundation. So we built the landing zone, we built all these cool Google accounts and so on, and we started building services on that. We installed a Kubernetes cluster, installed a GitOps environment, and built our delivery flow. Also, I think, very familiar to everyone. We created deployment templates to deploy the services through 3 stages and so on. So everything perfectly fine as long as you're working with it. And maybe we tried to get rid of some legacy mechanisms which bothered us for years. Good. And what are the results of those first steps after you build such deployment manifests and so on? And I think also this sounds very familiar to most of you, and you don't have to read this, so this is very long. We started to build everything based on customize because we thought it is the simplest way. And we have a base manifest and we have overlays for each stage. Now, just take a look on the base manifest. This got very large, and just for the records, behind that there was an open application model which abstracted away something. So it's much longer if you are taking everything from it. Furthermore, we have an overlay. We had an overlay there, which also got larger and larger. Good. Easy as that. I think many of you saw such things. But there are some things to consider here. The things we see there, so the base itself is a thing we will see in dev, production, and in staging. So, in fact, this is more or less there for everyone. On the right side, so on the overlay, we see everything which has to be changed and which has to be substituted for the respective stage. And if you know customize, you know that sometimes it gets really funny to change things. So the one thing I marked on the left side here will be the environment variable your developer wants to change. And maybe this will be part of an array, and maybe this will be in the middle of your manifest. So you have to deal with JSON patches, with substitutions, and whatever. So what you could learn from this is developers will add configuration. It's not a matter of when they will do it, if they will do it, they will. And until now, also have in mind, they simply had to change an environment file in the repository. Now they have to create this funny YAML files. They are still responsible for it. And they have to understand the structure you created. So also this can get really hard in the end. And as I said before, last but not least, they are responsible for their service. So if something breaks in there, often platform engineers take the way and say, it's your service, it's your responsibility. Good. What do I think what a developer-friendly configuration is? Not even that I'm the biggest Helm fan, but sometimes it's a cool thing. And we at Karriere.at are using Laravel services, and we simply said, yes, the only thing which have to be configured in a repository should be, I have to know how my service is named. I have to know where the image is located. Maybe, and this changed in the last few times, I can also configure Kafka topics in there. And I also can say, yes, I want to have a service account and some things more. At the moment, when we are delivering a new service, the user-facing configuration has about 10 to 20 lines. I think that's much simpler than the thing you saw before. The configuration of all of this should be easy to understand. So there should be some you should have a valid documentation. The developers should know where to find it. It should be intuitive to configure, and think about the developers. So when they have to create an environment variable, they should know where this is. If they want to configure the observability solution, they have to know where the value for this is. And in the best case, this is pre-configured, so it's hidden from the developers. We can template many things, and as I said before, provide as much documentation as possible for the configuration. But with all of this, what we saw before, until there, we were at a very technological point of platform engineering. And when we were talking about templates, when we built all of these templates, our mindset changed a bit. So we changed from a technology-centric approach to a more developer or service-centric approach. And whom of you ever played City Skylines or SimCity? And in the end, I also started playing City Skylines last year, and I felt like, isn't it a bit like City Skylines? So often your citizens won't react the way you expect them to. So you are building all of this fancy technological perfect stuff. I think Andy can write books about it, how I thought about it. But your citizens won't react the way you expect them to. So sometimes all of this fancy stuff won't get used. Furthermore, the platform should serve the needs of your citizen, not the other way around. So it's not about you are building cool stuff. It's about developers building cool features. At the end, the citizens will come by themselves if you build a nice environment for them. So, and this was also the thing we at Karriere.at thought. So when we are building a cool developer experience, the developers will like to work with it. Good. So we started with, what do our citizens really need? And in fact, we thought that every service can be seen as a residential area on its own. So it has streets, there are parks around it, there are streets around it, but also citizens have to bring something. So they have to bring some knowledge. They have to be aware of some things, and so on. And we also asked ourselves some questions as, how can we ensure that our citizens are healthy? And how can we get them happy? And how can we ensure that they can live a happy life? This also all started with a very simple drawing. You also don't have to have to be able to read it, but this is a typical service at Karriere.at, and I think services in your company will look the same way. We draw about all of these components. We tried to find out, how do we get into the service? So which interfaces do we have into the service? We have HTTP interfaces, we have asynchronous interfaces, and so on. And what's happening inside of the service? So I think nobody of you wants to build observability by your own, right? So you are taking OpenTelemetry and instrument it. Furthermore, nobody wants to implement a secret solution on its own. So you need secrets somewhere. And from this point on, we tried to find out, and this is the box on the bottom here, which kinds of platform capabilities do we need? So we need some kind of observability. We need an OpenTelemetry collector. We need Prometheus Jaeger or whatever to get to our signals. Furthermore, we said, yes, we need a database, we need Redis, we need a schema registry, and so on. And started also building the templates around it. But as you saw all of this around here, you see that building such a service would require lots of knowledge. So platform guys or architects and so on might have built POCs or prototypes all around this. So everything worked perfectly in your lab. And what I also learned in the last 8 years is if it works in a lab, it doesn't work in production. So sometimes also this doesn't work pretty well. And in the beginning of all of this platform efforts you are dealing with, and if you're dealing with all of this without some help, developers will be mainly busy with building the foundation, but they will never create value. So I think it took us weeks sometimes to get new features in our typical services and so on. And also, remember, they had a nice environment before. Now everything feels really complicated, and I think this drawing here shows very, very well how the cognitive overload besides platform engineering could be. Good. So we had this working thesis. So as a developer, I want to define my services in a simple way. So as I showed you before in the templates, so that I can focus on creating fancy things. I need to understand the characteristics of the underlying platform, but I don't have to be a CKAD to deploy my application. And with this, we started everything we did afterwards. So we started building residential and commercial areas, and the first thing we wanted to do is we wanted to make the bootstrapping of your services easier. So as I told you before, we have this this monolithic infrastructure. We wanted to get to a microservices architecture. So we have one services, we will get 70. Therefore, we have to bootstrap many services. So we defined a blueprint with all of this stuff I've shown you before. We found out whatever we can automate, also on the cloud provider environment, but also we defined goals and requirements on how to get our services running. So as an example, my working thesis at the beginning was, a service should be deployed in development in less than 5 minutes after bootstrapping. So there should be something visible after this is bootstrapped. Furthermore, databases, message queues, caches, and so on should be part of the blueprint. So in fact, the platform people shouldn't have to do something afterwards. Good, and then whatever you think about it, we didn't implement Backstage because it was already there. And the cool thing is that so before I started, there was a very nice use case for Backstage. So they used it for API specs. Therefore, I didn't have to discuss if we need to implement that Backstage. I only had to find out how to improve it. Although it's sometimes hard to use, the templating capabilities of Backstage can very much help you. So we got the templating of all of this stuff I've shown you before done in a few days. And after some time, we got to the point where our services could get bootstrapped very fastly. And at the moment, we are getting to a point where we said, if something doesn't fit to our whole Backstage ecosystem and so on, then we don't need it. The second thing we did was we built our schools and hospitals. So yes, the developer experience should be predefined, but some people want to take a look under the hood. And therefore, we developed a training program internally where we said, yes, everybody who wants to get deeper inside of all of this cloud native stuff, wants to know what Kubernetes is, wants to know how our pipelines work and so on, can participate in this training and will get all of the information he or she needs. The cool part about this was we offered this training program. Around 1 hour afterwards, the first course was fully booked with 12 or 30 places. And in the meanwhile, we are starting the second series, which was also booked after, I think, 2 days after we announced it. Or we didn't even announce it, let's say it this way. And we are also creating communities to share the knowledge and creating Slack channels to talk about things we are doing here and so on. We also enhanced the connections between all of the services and so on. So yes, the interfaces into our services are important. So we need telemetry, we need whatever. So we need databases and so on. So we are always trying to ensure that all of these roads, so API specs and so on, are well maintained and also reachable by everyone. Just for the sake of time, I will make it a bit faster. But the most interesting thing is, and this comes back to POCs and so on, is we started to building a lighthouse. So we took one of our, and in this case, it was not a project which was not too big and not too small. It was our most important project. And we said, we want to build this on our new foundation. And we built a team of developers, architects, and platform engineers. So at the moment, it's about 4 to 5 people, which created all of this. So we created the whole foundation from a service perspective, so from a development perspective, but also from a platform engineering perspective. And they sat on one table, they sat in one room, and we built a blueprint for all of the services we will build in the future. And in the meanwhile, we are at a point where we can say we have an open API spec and we will get the foundation of a service in minutes. We identified lots of challenges, which would have been identified by developers before and which would have been really cumbersome for them. And in the end, we also talked about it, we gathered feedback, and we iterated about everything. So in the start of all of this efforts, we had bi-weekly public reviews inside of the company where we showed the people what we did. The repositories were public and everybody could take a look on all of this. And this brings me to the end of this talk. So some learnings from it. You're gonna need it. So I often see the mentality of you ain't gonna need it. I think it's totally different. So sometimes developers are used to a certain way of working. So if they had features before, you should not try to get aware of it. You should try to ensure that they will have a similar experience afterwards. Developers like the comfort your traditional stack provides, so give them the same in a new environment. And think about your current development flow and think about how to improve things, but not about how to remove them. And just one important thing is, in the end, if something doesn't work, it's not their problem, it's yours. Because they won't use your platform and they won't use your cool features. So you are building a platform for your developers and services. You should build a foundation that is easy to use, but flexible enough to adapt to your needs. And the most important thing is take people on their way. Create training programs for them. Tell them how to use your platform, but also the underlying technologies. And in the end, create communities around them to share knowledge and experiences. And with this, it's always a pleasure to speak at home. So, and thank you for your attention here.
Thank you, Thomas. A quick couple of questions from my side before we have our mic runner running off. The training material you created internally, is this something that would be also available for a larger audience? Because I'm pretty sure many here would also say, how can we educate?
We mostly used slide deck. This is a thing we can provide in any way.
Mm-hmm. So connect with Thomas, make sure, right, if you want to not just rebuild everything from scratch. The second thing is, a great talk. Have you put it in for KubeCon Amsterdam? The deadline is Sunday, remember? And on Session Nights, it's pretty easy, but really
know how it works. I also have it in Session Nights.
Perfect. Cool. Any questions? Any questions? Don't see shit. Here we go. The light is so bright.
Yep.
First of all, thank you for the talk. I have multiple questions. One question would be, how much impact had this architectural change to microservices on your organizational level and also on the platform?
It didn't have much impact at the platform because the platform is pretty new. This is the easy part. On the organizational level, the teams were, so we had kinds of services or modules and so on before. So it also hadn't too much impact, but it had lots of impact from the way of working from the developers. Because we are following a strict API first approach. So they have to build API specifications before they write the first line of code. And this is a thing from a cultural and engineering perspective, which is pretty hard to implement.
Mm-hmm. So the teams have multiple services that they maybe operate. Okay. Second question about this example with customize. Did you use something like config map generators?
Yes, but I don't feel that this makes something better.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Raise your hand over there. Hi, did you manage to actually move away from your monolith in the end?
I'm sorry?
Did you manage to move away from your monolithic architecture in the end? Or do you think it's hard?
No. No, all of the things you've seen before is still work in progress, and it will also take some time.
Okay. And do you when did you start with the implementing your platform? Or?
We moved the first service around at the beginning of the year to the cloud.
So still ongoing. Thank you.
In the meanwhile, there are much more, but
there's one over there. Yeah.
To you first time.
And have you, I guess, while he's running, you also give talks at which Fachhochschule?
At the Fachhochschule St. Pölten in the Fachburgenland at the moment.
So you're basically educating, like what Ali said this morning, you're educating the next generation, show them what's possible. Really cool.
Yes, and sometimes I also want to try out what's possible, and sometimes things work, sometimes things don't work.
Over there?
How do you manage delivering new features as part of your Helm chart?
How the only features? We have such things as merge request deployments and so on. So every time you are creating a new merge request and so on, a new deployment starts of the service. We don't have feature flags at the moment. But we have things in config maps and so on.
I meant specifically features of the Helm chart. So like new sets of integrations with like a different database or something like that.
As follows a typical development process. So we have a repository. We are implementing some features. We are testing them and so on. So and afterwards we are also releasing the Helm chart itself, also with semantic versioning and so on. And what we also implemented very early for this Helm chart stuff was we implemented Renovate, and such things as patches at the moment are delivered automatically. In the future, we also plan to do minor changes fully automatically. If this was what you wanted to hear.
Do we have more? Or
I think two more questions first, and then I'll go down to.
I think the only AI that you used for this presentation was the create images, right?
Yep. And I also used the AI for reviewing all of this.
How big is your group of developers that you have? So what percentage of the developers were part of this Lighthouse project initiative as compared to the whole?
So I think we have around 30 engineers, and I think a group of 7 engineers were part of this Lighthouse stuff.
And one last, before we go into a coffee break. Andreas, you need to start sitting in better locations, otherwise it's going to be really tough.
Let's go. Here are you mentioned templating helps a lot. How do you manage updates of these templates?
We are seeing such Helm values and so on as more or less an API specification. So as an example, we don't rename fields, we add them and so on. So as you should do it, and we also have breaking changes and so on, which will enforce a major version change. And the rest is renovate and develop, and the developers updating their values. But at the moment, we are trying to avoid breaking changes as much as possible.
But it would be renovate updating Helm chart versions. Okay, cool.
But there's also one thing to say. So typically, normally, I'm not sure if it's the best idea to have one such a simple big Helm chart for all of the services you have. In our case, as we wanted to move fast and so on, we couldn't go the way where every developer has to develop his or her own Helm chart. Therefore, we took this way at the moment.
Awesome. Thanks again. A round of applause for Thomas.
Thank you.